When my sister doubted my heritage after Dad's will talk I'm 28, and my sister Rachel is 31. We've always had an okay relationship, not super close, but we got along fine at family events and texted now and then like typical siblings. Our dad is quite successful, having built a flourishing construction company from the ground up. Our mom passed away from cancer 8 years ago. About 6 months ago, Dad started talking about updating his will. It wasn't a big deal. He just wanted to make sure everything was organized, possibly setting up trusts. For someone in their early 60s, planning for retirement and legacy is pretty standard. Rachel and I, his only kids, would naturally split his estate. But ever since that conversation, Rachel's attitude toward me has shifted dramatically. It's like she became a different person, wary, cold, almost hostile. She started making odd remarks about how I didn't belong in the family, how I've always been an outsider. It began at a family dinner at Dad's house. She was flipping through old photos on his mantle and lingered on one of me as a newborn. She stared at it for ages before saying, "You really don't look like Mom or Dad in this picture." I brushed it off. Newborns all look like squished potatoes, right? But she pressed on, pointing out my nose, my eyes, questioning where those traits came from. She even held the photo next to my face. Dad was in the kitchen, out of earshot, but I was getting uncomfortable. I told her she was acting strange and that plenty of kids don't resemble their parents exactly. Genetics are complex. Maybe I got my great-grandma's cheekbones or my uncle's jawline. But Rachel just gave me this skeptical look, like I was hiding something. What really got under my skin was how she started spreading these doubts to other relatives. At my cousin's birthday party last month, I caught her whispering to our aunt that she'd always felt something was off about me. When she saw me listening, she didn't even flinch, just shrugged and walked off. Things escalated when she became fixated on family genetics and inheritance. She kept bringing up stories about people discovering shocking truths through DNA tests, sending me articles about adoptions or secret parentage revealed by science. She'd go on about how DNA never lies, how it uncovers the real truth about family ties. Last week, she cornered me at Dad's and asked if I'd ever wondered about my real parents. I was floored and asked what she was getting at. She said she'd been thinking about our family's genetics and how I didn't quite fit. I tried talking to Dad about her behavior, but I kept it vague because it sounded unhinged to explain. I just said Rachel seemed stressed and was saying weird things. He noticed she'd been tense but chalked it up to work pressure. What's messing with my head is how convinced Rachel seems. She doesn't come off as cruel or just stirring drama. She genuinely believes there's some big secret about my origins. But I know I'm Dad's biological son. I've got his hands, his laugh, his habit of yelling at broken gadgets. I've got Mom's stubborn streak and her weird double-jointed thumbs. I'm a mix of both of them in my own way. I'm starting to wonder if Rachel's having a mental health crisis. The timing with Dad's will update feels too convenient. Is she so paranoid about the inheritance that she's convinced herself I'm not family? Could this be some delayed reaction to Mom's death surfacing now? I'm at a loss here. Rachel's behavior is only getting worse. She started dropping hints about DNA tests and finding the truth in front of Dad. He laughs it off, but I can tell he's starting to notice something's wrong. Any advice would be appreciated. I'm completely lost. Update 1. Rachel's genealogy obsession. Remember how I mentioned her fixation on DNA testing? Well, she's turned it into a full-blown family project. A few days after my last post, Rachel showed up at Dad's with a whole presentation on genealogy and family history. She'd printed out articles on DNA testing, ancestry research, and genetic tracing. She pitched it as a fun bonding activity for our extended family to build a detailed family tree using DNA analysis. Her pitch was polished. She'd researched testing companies, their accuracy rates, and their databases for ancestry data. She talked about connecting with distant cousins, tracking family migration patterns, and solving mysteries about our great-great-grandparents. Dad was hooked. He's always been into family history and has wanted to trace our roots. Rachel knew exactly how to reel him in, talking about linking to historical figures or discovering relatives who came from Europe. But here's what gave me chills. Rachel insisted everyone needed to participate for the project to work. She said DNA comparisons only make sense with samples from multiple generations and family lines. She stressed that Dad and I had to join since we're the direct male line. She made it sound so logical and scientific, going on about how advanced DNA testing can reveal surprising family connections. She shared stories of people finding famous ancestors or unknown relatives. The sneakiest part? She framed it as a gift for Dad, a beautiful family tree for his next birthday, complete with DNA results and historical research. Dad loved it, saying Mom would have adored this project and how great it'd be to fill in our family's gaps. He jumped in, calling relatives to get them on board. Rachel took charge, ordering test kits and coordinating with everyone. She made herself the project manager, insisting on collecting all samples herself to ensure proper handling. Within days, she had commitments from Dad, me, 2 aunts, 3 cousins, and Dad's old uncle. Everyone was excited. Our aunt even started digging through old photos and documents to help. But I see through it. Rachel doesn't care about genealogy. She's trying to prove I'm not Dad's biological son. She's betting the DNA results will show I'm not related to the family. Instead of accusing me outright, she's crafted this scheme to look like the caring, organized daughter while trapping me in a spot where refusing the test makes me look guilty. If I opt out, I seem like I'm hiding something. If I call out her real motive, I sound paranoid. She's backed me into a corner, and my only move is to go along and hope the DNA results shut down her adoption theory for good. The worst part is watching Dad get so excited about this project. He calls me every few days with updates Rachel's shared about ancestry research or possible family connections we might find. He has no clue his daughter is using his passion for family history to try to disprove his son's paternity. I keep telling myself this will blow up in her face when the results confirm I'm Dad's kid. Hopefully, Rachel will drop this obsession once she's proven wrong. Update 2. Rachel's DNA sabotage attempt. Rachel was in charge of the test kits, so they arrived at her place. She texted our family group chat that she'd distribute them for everyone to provide samples. She wanted to collect them all at once and send them to the lab together to ensure they were processed as a batch. I was supposed to pick up my kit yesterday, but had to reschedule for work. I texted her I'd come by today instead, and she said she'd leave it with her roommate if she wasn't home. When I got to Rachel's apartment, her roommate let me in and said Rachel was out running errands but left my kit on the kitchen counter. There were 2 kits there, so I grabbed one and was about to leave when I noticed the box was already opened. That seemed odd. Test kits are supposed to be sealed until you use them. I checked inside, and the saliva collection tube already had spit in it. I stared at it for a solid 5 minutes, trying to make sense of it. The tube should have been empty. I was supposed to provide the sample, seal it, and send it to the lab. My first thought was that Rachel accidentally gave me someone else's completed kit. But then I saw my name on all the forms inside. It hit me. Rachel was planning to submit someone else's DNA under my name. I called her right away to ask what was going on. She acted confused, so I explained the tube already had saliva and the forms had my name. There was a long pause, then she laughed it off as a prank. She said she was testing if I'd notice and was impressed. I did. She claimed she'd put her own saliva in the tube as a joke and had my real kit ready. I told her tampering with DNA tests isn't funny. She kept insisting it was harmless fun. When I got home, I thought it over and called her again, demanding to know whose DNA was really in the tube. She tried to brush me off, but I wouldn't let it go. Finally, she admitted it was her friend Clara's sample. Clara's a coworker I've met maybe twice at Rachel's events. She's not family. If Clara's DNA went in under my name, the results would show no genetic link to Dad or our relatives. I asked Rachel why she'd do this, what she was trying to achieve. She dropped the prank excuse and said she needed to know the truth about my parentage and was protecting Dad's interests. She said if I was really Dad's son, I shouldn't be scared to take the test properly. Her logic was nonsense. She thought submitting fake DNA would somehow expose me as a fraud, like it'd prove her adoption theory. I explained that Clara's DNA would only show Clara's unrelated to our family, which we already knew. It wouldn't say anything about my real genetics. But Rachel wasn't hearing it. She kept saying I was hiding something, and my reaction proved I was scared of the truth. I told her I'd take the test properly, but wanted a brand new kit she hadn't touched. I said I'd order my own directly from the lab and submit it myself to avoid tampering. Rachel flipped out, calling me paranoid and accusing me of ruining the family genealogy project. She said everyone was excited about it, and I was wrecking it with my suspicions. I pointed out she was the one tampering with DNA samples, but she kept deflecting, calling it a harmless joke. When I said I'd tell Dad what she did, she hung up and texted me, begging me not to involve him and promising not to mess with my real sample if I dropped it. I'm not dropping this. Rachel tried to commit fraud by submitting someone else's DNA as mine. This is way beyond weird suspicions about my parentage. I ordered my own test kit from the lab today and will submit a legit sample to prove I'm Dad's son. This is worse than I ever imagined. Update 3. DNA results and Rachel's denial the DNA results came back, and I'm 100% Dad's biological son. But Rachel's reaction to the proof is unhinged, and I'm seriously worried about her mental state. I got my results first since I ordered my kit directly from the lab while Rachel was still organizing the family batch. The results were exactly as expected. A 50% genetic match with Dad, clear ties to our aunts and cousins, and ancestry matching our known family history. Everything lined up perfectly with being part of this family. I was relieved to have scientific proof of something I never doubted. I hoped this would end Rachel's bizarre adoption conspiracy. I showed Rachel the results first, thinking it'd give her a chance to admit she was wrong and maybe apologize. Big mistake. She stared at the report for ages, silent, then started grilling me about the testing process, where I got the kit, how I submitted it, if I was sure the lab didn't mix up samples if anyone else touched my kit. I explained I ordered it straight from the company, handled the sample myself, and tracked everything to avoid errors. The results were rock solid. Rachel then accused me of rigging the test, saying it couldn't be right because she knew I wasn't Dad's son. She insisted I'd somehow manipulated the process. I asked what proof she had, and she listed the most random things. How I hold my utensils differently than Dad, how my laugh seems fake around family, how I've always tried too hard to fit in, which she says proves I don't belong. It's delusional reasoning, turning normal behavior into evidence of some grand lie. It gets worse. Rachel's now pushing for everyone to retake the DNA tests at a different lab. She claims she doesn't trust the company we used and wants independent verification from another provider. She's been calling relatives, pitching it as ensuring our genealogy project is accurate. The manipulative part is how she's framing it to Dad, not mentioning her adoption theory or the sabotage attempt, just acting like a thorough researcher who wants the best data. Dad thinks it's reasonable and doesn't know about her real motives. He's agreed to another test and encouraged others to join. Rachel's already ordered new kits and is organizing the collection process again, which worries me after her tampering. This time, I'll make sure Dad's there when I submit my sample, and I'll document the sealed kit for proof. The frustrating part is I know the new results will just confirm I'm Dad's son again. But Rachel seems convinced another lab will back her theory. I'm starting to think she's got a mental health issue fixated on my parentage. She's built this conspiracy and rejects any evidence against it, claiming reality itself is wrong. I want to tell Dad everything, but I'm scared he won't believe me. Rachel's so good at seeming rational that my story might sound crazy. My best bet is to do the second test and let the results prove her wrong again. This has gone from annoying to deeply troubling. I'm not just dealing with sibling rivalry or inheritance worries anymore. I think Rachel's in a psychological crisis, obsessed with proving I'm not family. Update 4. The fallout and cutting ties. I told Dad everything, and Rachel's out of my life. This whole thing exploded in ways I never saw coming, and I'm just glad it's over. The second round of DNA tests came back identical to the first. I'm Dad's biological son, genetically tied to all our relatives with matching ancestry markers. The results were basically a carbon copy of my first test. I thought Rachel would finally face reality, but she doubled down harder than ever. She started digging into DNA testing error rates, citing obscure articles about lab mistakes. She claimed both labs made the same error, or that my samples were somehow contaminated. Things hit a breaking point when she started telling relatives her adoption theory outright. Before, she'd kept it subtle, but after the second results confirmed I'm Dad's son, she dropped the secrecy. She called our cousin Ethan, saying she had serious doubts about my origins and thought Dad was fooling himself about having a biological son. She asked Ethan to help convince Dad for a third round of tests at a lab she'd pick and oversee. Ethan was baffled and called Dad right away, saying Rachel seemed to be unraveling over family DNA and making wild claims about me being adopted. Dad called me immediately, asking what was happening. I couldn't cover for Rachel anymore. She was dragging extended family into her delusions, and Dad deserved the truth. I laid it all out. Her months of cryptic comments and adoption hints, her manipulation of the genealogy project, the DNA sabotage attempt. Dad listened in stunned silence. When I finished, he paused and said, "She's been trying to prove you're not my son? Why would she do that?" I said it seemed tied to his will update, like she was trying to cut me out of the inheritance. Dad went quiet, then said he needed to talk to Rachel now. The confrontation was rough. Dad asked her point-blank if she was questioning my parentage and trying to prove I was adopted. She denied it at first, but when Dad brought up the sabotage and her calls to relatives, she admitted everything. She said she didn't believe I was his biological son and had been trying to prove it for months to protect his interests and ensure his estate went to his true child. Dad asked what evidence she had, and she repeated the same nonsense she told me. Random childhood memories and quirks she claimed proved I wasn't his. Dad said her evidence was absurd and that she was trying to ruin her brother's place in the family over baseless obsession. He told her he was ashamed of her and couldn't fathom how she'd turned so cruel. Rachel broke down, crying, insisting she was right, that the DNA tests were wrong, that Dad was being deceived. She begged for a third test at a lab she'd verify herself. That's when Dad snapped. He called her delusional and said her fixation had broken their family. He told her he couldn't trust her anymore and didn't want her around until she got professional help for whatever was driving this behavior. Rachel left his house that day and hasn't spoken to either of us since. She's blocked my number and social media, and Dad says his calls go to voicemail and his texts don't deliver. Dad kept asking why I didn't tell him sooner, and I explained I'd hoped Rachel would snap out of it and didn't want to stir up family drama over what seemed like temporary paranoia. But he's glad I finally spoke up, saying her behavior was escalating and could have gotten worse if unchecked. Dad's told Rachel, through other relatives, that he'll pay for therapy if she's willing to address what's fueling this, but he won't allow contact until she admits her adoption theory was delusional. As for me, I'm done with Rachel for good. I don't care if she gets help or apologizes. Some betrayals cut too deep. She spent months trying to erase my bond with my father and rip me from my family. She even tried fraud with fake DNA. Dad's rethinking parts of his estate planning now. He won't share details, but I suspect Rachel's inheritance status has taken a hit. He said trust and loyalty are huge factors in how he views family legacy. Some might say I should forgive Rachel if she gets help, but I'm not interested. She tried to wipe me out of my own family. That's not something I can move past. Thank you for watching my story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Stay tuned for more real-life stories, get more experiences.